Hello everyone, Last Wanderer here. Yes, you saw the title of this video right. I, a technical player, am advocating not for the LA, but for the Copper Golem in this year's mob vote. Obviously, Oscar the Grouch isn't a legitimate contender in this race. I'm sorry, but the F3 screen isn't even needed with the new 1.18 mob spawning changes. Now, before any LA voters get upset, let me just explain my position. You might also learn some new mob details. The LA is a problematic mob. It's a lot more complex than it seems on the surface of just picking up items and dropping them by note blocks. First, let me clear up some misconceptions. No, the LA does not duplicate items. It also cannot mine or take items out of a chest. It only picks up items on the ground. The LA is simple though, right? No! Currently, it is unknown where the LA will spawn or what its search radius will be. It needs the player to give it its first item, but it will never drop that given item unless a player takes it back. It will also have two inventory spots, one for the player given item, and the other for gathering more items. To be clear, the LA gathers more of the same or similar items, which is not what you want to hear if it's supposed to sort unstackable items like many players want. Let's be clear though, it might not even be technically possible to sort some unstackable items with different MBT values. There's also the big problem of where it drops the items. It could drop all the items neatly in one place on a note block, or all around that note block, and that makes a huge difference. It also looks like the LA will have a complex point of interest system. If you know how the point of interest system works with villagers, you'd know that's a pain, especially with them switching blocks by random chance, or when they're pushed by a piston. With the basics of the LA out of the way, let me get to some more of its problems. The LA will be slow. A one-slot flying hopper isn't as useful as you might think it is. It's not going to pick up items even nearly as fast as a hopper or hopper minecart. Items can also be moved much faster with water streams. You would need multiple LAs sorting at the same time to come even close to the speed of a hopper, at which point you'd have a larger sorter than usual item sorters. The LA's biggest selling point is that it might be able to properly sort all unstackable items. However, if we're going by what might happen, I would also like to point to the Copper Golem. It appears to be made of copper blocks and a lightning rod on top. Such mobs can usually be spawned by a dispenser dispensing the top block onto the mob. This means that they'd probably be spawned by a dispenser dispensing a lightning rod. And if dispensers can dispense lightning rods, wouldn't that give precedence for them to now finally dispense other blocks? Again though, this is just more speculation, similar to what is being done now with the LA. At the end of the day though, neither of these mobs will likely revolutionize redstone. Funnily enough though, they probably won't even be as useful as the fox. These two mobs are more or less supposed to be dynamic elements that can also interact with redstone rather than being the major technical innovation the LA keeps being described as. With such high expectations, it's very likely it will just end up letting players down. With that said, an unstackable item sorter would be a neat addition to the game. It's just a laggy, complex mob probably wouldn't be the best way to do it. Who knows, maybe we can get something better to sort unstackables if the LA loses, just like how Mob C's functionality was later added to the grindstone. The Copper Golem, on the other hand, is a very different story than the LA. The Copper Golem will be the first golem to be added in over 10 years by the time it makes it in-game. It will be the long-awaited third member to the player-spawned utility mob trio. No, the Wither does not count. The Copper Golem would also oxidize over time, like copper, and it will work as a mobile lightning rod, drawing lightning in to reverse its oxidation. Pretty cool, right? You'd also be able to remove oxidation from it with an axe, or you could wax it to prevent it from ever oxidizing. If you do let it oxidize all the way though, it would make for a great statue. Alright, with all that out of the way, let me get to my main points in support of the Copper Golem. First, copper is very bland and not very useful right now. The only things we can craft with copper are decorational blocks, the lightning rod, and the spyglass. In contrast, with iron, you can craft iron blocks, iron pressure plates, iron doors, iron trapdoors, armor, tools, iron nuggets, chains, anvils, cauldrons, iron bars, minecarts, pistons, hoppers, and more. Gold can be used to craft gold blocks, golden apples, powered rails, gold pressure plates, armor, tools, clocks, gold nuggets, and it can be used to barter with piglins. To be fair, copper does have a lot of decorative blocks, but it definitely needs more uses. Copper golems and copper buttons would be a great start. With copper being the first metal button, it might actually do something different, and might oxidize just like copper. Second, the Copper Golem is the best dynamic mob out of all three options. As I said earlier, none of these mobs are a breakthrough in redstone utility. They're supposed to allow bases to be more dynamic, which is very different from the narrative of Copper Golems just being a redundant randomizer. Copper Golems are not just the Chicken Randomizer 2.0. They're dynamic mobs that'll run around and interact with select contraptions. Since copper golems like being around copper buttons, they won't abandon you like the iron or snow golem. And since they can be spawned in by the player, they'll be much easier to obtain than the friendly Vex reskin. Copper golems can also even be used as decorative statues if you let them fully oxidize. The copper golem will be a fun addition to bases and builds. Third, and this will be a short point, vote for copper golems for archaeology. Apparently, if the copper golem wins, it might have connections to the archaeology system, which would be really cool and interesting lore-wise. Finally, the Copper Golem is absolutely hilarious. It is the pinnacle of Minecraft comedy. You might be thinking, what's so funny about a miniature golem that runs around and pushes copper buttons? Well, dear viewer, did you happen to know that copper buttons, like any other button, can be placed on any full block? And while there are many such blocks in the game, you could put it on something like, say, TNT. I'm sure you can imagine the chaos now. Happen to have a friend at their base? Give them the gift of some TNT with a copper button, then spawn in the Copper Golem. What's funnier than watching someone get eviscerated by the Iron Golem's little brother? And if you're not satisfied with that trap, remember, it can be used for so many more, like arrow and lava dispensers, or to spawn in a wither in the center of your friend's base. And if that's not funny enough, remember, you can drag one of these suckers next to someone during a thunderstorm to watch them get zapped. As a bonus, you might get a charged creeper. Now, if none of that is convincing enough to you, remember, copper golems oxidize over time and then turn into statues. What's funnier than using a dead mob as a decoration? Well, I'll tell you. The fact that the Copper Golem isn't actually dead and is actually perpetually frozen in a prison of its own body, unable to move, but totally aware of everything, watching time march past it for all of eternity unless you choose to free it. Peak comedy there, am I right? With all that said though, if I haven't persuaded you, vote however you like. I don't hate the LA, it's a pretty cool mob, and I only favor the Copper Golem slightly. And the glare? I don't think I even have to mention the glare. If you want to vote for the LA, vote for it. But I can't imagine how you'd sleep at night knowing you didn't vote for this cute little Copper Golem. Thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye!
No!